We start lifting up through the ceiling. And as soon as my feet left the ground, it was dark in my room, but I could see. Your eyes adjust. But as soon as my feet lifted off the ground, I couldn't see anything anymore. I could hear, I could still feel their hands, but it was black.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vibrant Soul Society, The Conversations. Today we have a very special guest with us, Allison. Welcome to The Conversations.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Let's jump into this. Who is Allison?
Well, let's see. Where should I begin? I feel like a regular everyday mom who also is into things like consciousness and raising my vibrations and UFOs and things like that. So I have a identical twin sister that I spend a lot of time with, and I've got 2 kiddos and a husband. I do some consulting. I also do some writing. I'm getting ready to start a podcast. So I have a lot of things going on these days.
Okay, so you talked about consciousness. That's really one of my favorite conversations, consciousness, because we get tied up in this human identity, forgetting who we really are at our true core. I want people to remember that they are a vibrant soul having this human experience. What do you find interesting about consciousness?
When I think of consciousness, I'm always thinking of the greater I am, our soul versus who we are in this 3D physical body, this ego personality, and trying to expand my awareness. Who you are never goes away, but we can become more aware of what that means to us and take actions on that. Anytime I see a synchronicity in my life, it's that constant reminder of, oh, I am bigger than this person. There are things at play, things orchestrated from a higher level that my soul has decided. The synchronicity is telling me, yes, you're on the right path right now. I love those little nods from the universe. When I think about consciousness, that's what comes to mind is that bigger I am. Here's your trajectory. That's kind of what we're here for.
Right. So that's a good point. You're talking about increasing awareness and noticing the synchronicities. I can see some people not realizing there's synchronicity going on. How did you know that this is going on? I see this. There's a synchronicity here. What was that pivot point for you to acknowledge and recognize the synergies that are always around us?
I'd say my 2 top synchronicities that I get all the time is I see repeating numbers on a clock. For example, if I'm having a day where I'm doing consulting, which is financial consulting, it pays the bills, but it's not what I feel like I'm here to do. It's not what I'm passionate about. It just seems like a normal day. But if I'm taking a day where I'm writing, talking to people, or having wonderful experiences where I feel like I'm really on track, every time I look at the clock, every single time it'll be, 2:22, 11:11, 10:10. And those are just, to me, little synchronicities like, yes, this is the path of who you are right now. I also have situations where I'm thinking something and then the person I'm talking to says the exact same words that I'm thinking. It shows us how everything is connected to us, everything in this sort of invisible field around us that we don't see. But once we align with it perfectly, we get these little repetitions of things or something happening at the same time, or like a deja vu in a moment that's really, really exciting. And I'm like, have I already experienced this? I feel like I have. So it's that like being very present in the moment feeling.
Yeah, presence is a really big topic as well. I wasn't really present for life for most of it. I was completely wrapped up in the drama of the day, the stories. So how did you increase your awareness of this moment?
I think I've been working on that my whole life. I definitely will credit having a lot of really good mentors in people like Bashar and other ET channelers and things like that who I can listen to. I just feel like this information clicks. This is right. And taking that in and trying to figure out how to apply it to my life. I'm an avid reader. I read a lot of Dolores Cannon material. I love Neil Donald Walsh, his books, Conversations with God series. And so I think, honestly, once I started to really study metaphysical topics and learn about consciousness, that's when I started to have the ability to stop myself and have that awareness. Because if everyone, like you said, you can't really feel present in your day-to-day normal life. You're going through this rat race. There's dramas happening all around you, and people will think that things are happening to them instead of for them. So they're not taking the time to stop and be still and reflect And I think that the podcast that me and my sister are going to be doing is all about that, is allowing people to ask themselves the big questions and then have opportunities to stop and reflect. When you do that, you notice the synchronicities, you have better awareness. You'll catch yourself when you're having a negative thought train or negative feelings and figure out, oh, wait, okay, that's not me. I'm out of alignment. Something's out of balance. And I use what I've learned from all my mentors and books that I've read, like, okay, here's the tools that I have in my pocket that I can pull out and apply.
Was there a pivot point in your life where you said things have to change that led you into exploring consciousness?
I'd say there were probably three major ones. One was when I was a little kid. I was 5 years old and I saw an ET for the first time. So that was huge. From that point forward, I was into all things, aliens and Sasquatch, all the things that kids are interested in. But I always had that in the back of my mind. And then I'd say, this was January 2022. I actually had a very significant experience with some ETs and ended up quitting that same day a job that I'd had for 20 plus years. And I didn't even connect the two for a long time, that those two things even happened on the same day, because it was almost 24 hours later. And it was one of those things, burnout, so stressed out. I'd been working 80 hours a week for months on end. I got to the point where my body said, you can't do this anymore. This is not who you are anyway. This is not what you're supposed to be doing. So I quit that job. Okay, what do I want to do? Who am I? That's that pivot point. I can completely rearrange and do whatever I want to do. I spent the next 3 years trying a lot of different things that I liked. I did painting, writing, I did life coaching for a little while. Just trying to figure it all out. My third one was quite recently. About 6 weeks ago, I had a near-death experience. I had a sort of a stress-induced extensive pulmonary embolisms, which is clots in your lungs. And that really made me, once again, that was another pivot point to where I was like, well, okay, I am following my passion and doing what I love, but maybe not to the best of my ability. So there's definitely some things that I need to reorganize and really think about. And it's been this crazy journey over the past 6 weeks, trying to figure all of that out and integrate everything that I've learned over the years. So I guess those were definitely my three main pivots in life.
When you were 5 years old, your ET experience, what happened at that moment that's set you into that path of exploring that realm?
Yeah, so it was 1989 in Central Arkansas. It was in the middle of the night. I got up to use the bathroom. I came back to my room. I shared a room with two of my siblings. And when I walked back into the room, middle of the night, I noticed the curtain that faced the road, which was always closed because we were right next to the highway and the lights would come in at us. The curtain was wide open. And sitting in this school desk out on our front porch, because my mom had been a teacher for years, so we had this school desk sitting out there, was your typical gray alien. I mean, what you see in movies, the X-Files and whatever, just your very typical gray alien. It was looking at me and I was looking at it. And I don't remember being scared other than I didn't want to scream because I knew it would wake up my siblings. And I did not want to have to deal with someone being mad at me. So I just remember looking at it, and then I went over to my bed and I had this inkling to pull open the curtain of the other window. And when I did that and peeked out, there was this saucer-shaped ship in our backyard, less than 20 feet away from my window, because it was like right between me. We had a storm cellar in the backyard, so it was between that. And it had these blinking lights on the rim. It was sitting on tripod legs. I didn't know what to think. It was something I didn't have any reference point for at that point of what that was. I shut the curtain, laid down in my bed and pulled my covers up. The next thing I remember is waking up with light shining through the blanket. And I woke up so excited. I told everybody in the household that I have the coolest story ever. Like, this thing happened to me. So that definitely set me on a path of being interested in these things, and have had a lot of interesting experiences since then.
That's interesting that set you on that path. Did you go explore the backyard, see if there's any indentations, any validation with that?
I don't remember. I will say, though, that for about 6 months after that, anytime, I'd say it happened maybe half a dozen times or so, I would go to the bathroom because we had a small house and there were 5 of us. And the only place I could ever be alone was in the bathroom. So sometimes I would just go in there to be by myself. And all of a sudden, it just materialized out of thin air. This little green dog, I can only describe it as a cartoon alien dog, would just pop in and kind of float around. And, I just thought, I just had this inkling of like, this is them checking on me. They never talked to me. It never tried to communicate as far as I know, as far as I remember. I had a name for him and everything. And I remember telling my mom about it after it happened 6 or 7 times. And she was like, oh, you just have an imaginary friend. And I'm like, well, I don't think so. This is very real. Like, this isn't my imagination. So I think I knew from a very young age that that wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't a dream. There were other incidents of them. So I just kind of knew that I was going to be involved with something, but I really didn't know what it was. And then I didn't have any more experiences with them for many, many more years. But every day I would see that gray alien sitting in that desk outside the window at least once a day for the next 35 years. It was just something I always thought of.
Mm. Did you see more grays in January 2022? Sure. What was that experience?
That's kind of a long story, so I'll condense it down. I was going through an extremely stressful time with my work and was up in the middle of the night. Couldn't go back to sleep, feeling a lot of anxiety and stress. I decided, okay, I need to raise my vibration. I'm in a very low vibration. What do I need to do? So I started kind of meditating and sending love out to the people that maybe I was not having a great feeling about at that time, coworkers and things like that. And trying to raise my vibration. And obviously, I feel like that worked because while I was in the middle of that sort of meditative state, I felt like a change in the air in the room. I opened my eyes and could see a being on the other side of my bed. My husband and this being on the other side of the bed. And just kind of its head was like, I could only see it from the nose up. It was peeking over. And its arm was outstretched towards me over my husband's chest. It was offering me to take its hand. I got so excited because I've listened to people that channel ETs. I've been into this stuff my whole life and felt I had a strong connection with them. I grabbed its hand and long story short, it's standing next to me all of a sudden. And it was kind of what you could think of as a gray as far as its shape. Its skin was a little bit wrinklier, had more of instead of like a dull gray color, it had this very soft pink glow that was really beautiful. It felt very like a motherly type, nurturing energy. Like, what's your name? Where are you from? What are we going to do? I couldn't stop asking questions, one right after the other. I guess it needed to calm me down. So I leaned its head towards me on my shoulder, and I just felt this wave of calmness over me. And I stopped talking. After that, I felt another one behind me grab my shoulder. I got scared because I'm thinking, I don't know what's behind me. There's more than one, obviously, and it's got its hands like kind of around my neck area. I'm thinking, am I about to be choked? That quickly passed because I'm like, they would have already hurt me. So I turned around and there was another one, just like the one next to me, except it was taller, about a foot taller. It looked the same. I was holding both of their hands and I start getting excited again. Who are you? Where are you from? Are you this race? Are you that race? And again, they kind of did whatever they do to calm me down. And I could kind of hear what I thought was some type of telepathic communication between them, but I couldn't really understand it. It was too soft or too fast or all of the above. At some point, they stopped that. But at some point, we start to raise up. And because I thought we were going to walk out because our bedroom kind of leads off into the backyard. And I thought, I'm going to get to see a ship. We're going outside. We start lifting up through the ceiling. As soon as my feet left the ground, it was dark in my room, but I could see. Your eyes adjust. As soon as my feet lifted off the ground, I couldn't see anything anymore. I could hear, I could still feel their hands, but it was black. I went up through like my ceiling fan. I could hear it whirring. I went up through the second floor and I'm thinking, okay, we're getting ready to pass through my son. Is that going to wake him up? His bed's right above us. And that kind of freaked me out. So we kept going up maybe 30 seconds. I came to a room that I assumed was on a ship. Did not see the outside of it. Was in this vast black space, no walls, floor, anything like that. but I could see people like humans sitting around having a conversation. And it's like, I'm just passing through. They notice me. They kind of like acknowledge that I'm there. They seem happy to see me, but then they go about their conversation, and I continue to raise up out of that room. And I go to this second level where there was another group of people. They were standing in these rows and all facing the same direction. And they all had their arms down to their sides, shaking like they were being electrocuted or something. And I was like, I don't want to be in this room. This does not look like a great place to be. I don't want to be doing that. But as soon as I set my feet down in that room, it was like I completed the circuit or something, and everyone snapped out of it and looked at me. And it was like I knew every single person there. And this reunion ensued. I couldn't tell you right now who any of these people are. I don't know them here on this earth, but I knew them there. We talked for several minutes. There was only one person in this room that I didn't know. Towards the end of this experience, the ETs were to the side just watching us. But at one point, one of them walked back over to me and was pointing at the gentleman that was two people to my right, the one that I didn't really know. And they were saying like, do you know him? Do you know him? Do you know him? I didn't know who this was. And I felt really pressured to answer, and I didn't have an answer. I just said, I don't know, do I know you from the bank? I've been seeing so many customers and people in my life working at a bank. As soon as I said that, the next thing I know is I'm sitting up in my bed, back in my room. What just happened? Wide awake. I looked at my phone. About 45 minutes had passed. And I immediately wrote everything down. I didn't want to forget it. I felt like I failed some test though. Like I was supposed to know this person that I didn't know on the ship. I knew everybody else there. We were family. We had some purpose. And then I didn't know this one guy. So it really bugged me. But fast forward about 18 months, and I actually figured out who it was and was able to connect with him. He doesn't know me from Adam. We connected, and he actually said that he had missing time that same day because he keeps a journal. There's kind of a long side story with that. It was one validation for me that I guess it was real, even though I felt like I didn't need the validation, because if the experience happens to you, it's very real. It wasn't making it up. That definitely happened on very early morning hours on a Saturday. And it was that night at midnight that I ended up quitting my job of 20-something years after working all day and being so stressed. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. 3 months later, before I figured out, oh my gosh, those things happened on the same day. That's pretty significant. There had to be some reason for that.
Do you think they imparted some knowledge into you, or do you have any insights with the purpose between age 5 to 2022? Do you think you had other experiences that you don't remember?
I feel like I did, because I've had a lot of dreams and astral experiences that I wouldn't say was full on physical ET contact. But there weren't any significant themes or patterns that kind of changed my day-to-day life. It felt like a huge gap where I didn't really have much going on. But I feel, since I've talked to so many people about their experiences, that there's probably other things that happened that it was not the right time for me to remember that. I needed to be on a certain path during those years. I didn't need to get sidetracked by thinking about all this stuff maybe too early. I definitely think there was information being imparted on me. That one experience had to do with the gentleman at the end. I ended up finding him in real life, speaking to him and learning about his journey and some projects he had going on. He was a documentary filmmaker and made some alien-related documentaries, and was in the middle of making more. He didn't get to finish his projects because he passed away this year from very aggressive pancreatic cancer. He went downhill pretty quickly, unfortunately. And I didn't realize for the longest time, why in the world would I have an experience where I meet this stranger on a ship, go through all these synchronicities to somehow come across him in real life? And he lived very far away from me. We never met in person. It was only over Zoom and messaging that we communicated. Then he passes away, and I never got to figure out why we were supposed to know each other. What was the purpose of that? Were we supposed to work together? Were we supposed to just know each other? I mean, I had no idea until my near-death experience about 6 weeks ago. Part of that gave me clarification on the purpose of that and why I was supposed to know him. In a nutshell, the message that I got was he did not get to finish his projects. It wasn't that I was supposed to know him yet. but I was supposed to get to know him and remember that he was unable to finish his, passion projects for the world. He was wanting to help humanity, but I have the opportunity now and was given the opportunity to come back and finish what I started, whereas he did not get to finish what he started. It's been a really emotional journey for me, and I'm so thankful that I got to know him a little bit. That's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I got a few comments, but that word really resonated with me. They didn't want you to get sidetracked, from that experience at 5 to whatever from 2022. Maybe you were supposed to go along a certain path, and they didn't want you to get sidetracked by exploring this or exploring this. They wanted you to have what you call a natural life or a natural progression, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely. And I've heard other people say that too, that they will only let you remember what is right, your higher mind that dictates is right for you at the time. Because, if I was having, especially my teenage years, early 20s, there's a lot going on with people. That's a really stressful point in your life, a lot of transitions and big life moves you're making. And I had a child at that time too. And if I would have been remembering abduction encounters or something like that, I would have certainly not gone down the path that I went down. And, sometimes I'm like, well, what could I have done if I had had an entire life with this knowledge? Where could I be right now? But I don't feel like I have any type of regrets in not knowing that information. I definitely know that I was in the right places at the right times with the information that I needed in that moment.
Right, because it really reminds me, like I wasn't sidetracked. I really like that word sidetracked because I had an experience at 5 years old. I was in a really bad car accident. I was hit by a car. And what I remembered that night was waking up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, seeing three tall silhouettes on each side of me, removing my life support, removing my tubes. And then after that, after I woke up and I saw this bright light and saw what they were doing, like everything went blank. I don't remember anything after that. But I remember it distinctly in the morning, my mom asking me, "Why'd you remove your tubes? Why'd you remove your life support?" She didn't step back and say, "He couldn't have done this. Look at this condition that he was in. I nearly died from that. I had all these broken bones and all these issues." But she never stepped back and say, "He couldn't have done this." And that was sort of suppressed for me. But then my wife today will say, "I think they put something in you or endowed you with a program from that accident." For 38 years, I had a tremendous amount of health challenges. But one day I discovered meditation. Then I heard a voice reminding me who my true essence was, perfect spirit. My health issues went away. It's like,
Oh, wow.
wow. It's like,
That's great.
boom. So it was really like a spontaneous healing. She was like, probably something when, I was age 6. They probably did something to
Yeah.
you at age 6 that you just don't remember. But when you
Uh-huh.
had that switch, that trigger, something else kicked in. And now my life is completely different from that evening. I was thinking about you at the sidetrack that
Mhm.
I was meant to go on this suffering journey. So now I can help others that are suffering get out of it.
Yeah, and all that growth that you experienced. And isn't it funny how you think your life's going to have this trajectory and then it just does this total 180 from this weird paranormal experience that you feel like you want to talk about, but you're not really sure you can talk to about it. And sometimes you're not sure if it's even real because it's so wild and wacky. You watch Hollywood and media, and they make fun of it. It's supposed to be scary or it's wrong or it's just all in your head. But even at 5 years old, that was such a visceral memory for you. You remember it clear to this day. It was a turning point for you, a huge pivotal moment in your life, obviously.
Yeah, it was really, I just didn't really understand, and my mom didn't step back and say, "How could this be? He couldn't have done this. So who did it?" But it's always that. And then I get the clarity today, that they were really showing me that we didn't need the outside world to heal ourselves. And that's what I really teach people today, that we have all the resources within ourselves to heal ourselves if we get rid of all this mental interference that I call it the head trash. So when you're talking about your experience, it was just remind me of what Bashar talks about and the hybrid programs that he mentions. Do
Mhm.
you get any inkling when you're listening to Bashar that might be part of your journey?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Some of my experiences in the last few years and astral experiences feel like I've had procedures or something extracted. I've had a lot of memories just in the last few years down that road. Sometimes I can't tell if it's an astral experience, it feels like it's not happening right now. It almost feels like a memory that's coming up from me being younger, but it's really hard to pinpoint when. I can pinpoint the where because it's like, oh, I'm in my childhood home, but who doesn't have dreams about being in their childhood homes? I definitely feel like I'm part of the hybridization program. I feel like I have hybrid children. I've had dreams about hybrid children and being presented like babies that are a little bit larger than a normal baby and they can talk fluently, but they can't really move. Like they don't have any really other physical, they still have to hold them and be really gentle and all that, but they're extremely intelligent and can have full conversations with you. So I definitely feel like that too. I was going to show you this as well. I have this birthmark that I feel like is like my little spaceship. People will ask me a lot when they hear about, okay, I have a twin sister and I've had these experiences, and they hear about, well, a lot of times this is generational, or in your family, you may have other people that have had these types of experiences. And there isn't anybody else in my family who will admit that any of this stuff has happened to them. So I tell people that at least when I was a child, this was how they would know my birthmark is like, okay, that's the twin that you go get, not the other one, because I've got the birthmark and she doesn't. Every time I look at it, I only see it when I'm in the mirror because it's on the outside of my arm. So just day to day, I never see it. It's only when I'm looking in the mirror or at a picture, I get reminded of this little mark on my body. And I'm like, yes. I actually had an interaction with Bashar at one point and asked him about that birthmark. Didn't go into great detail, but I just said, does it have anything to do with my ET connection? He's like, you answered your own question. Of course it does. So it's like, okay, sounds great.
For the audience that isn't familiar with Bashar, can you explain a little bit about him?
Daryl Anka has been channeling Bashar for about 40 years. Bashar is a collection of entities, but also he explains it that he's sort of Daryl's future self in a way, future counterpart in a civilization in a slightly different reality than ours on a planet called Estisani. Bashar is a first contact specialist, so he's very much involved in getting us acclimated through Daryl about other civilizations and what we can do to raise our vibrations. Even if you don't believe in any of that stuff, even if you don't believe he's an ET, even if you don't believe in aliens at all, the information that Bashar gives is resonating with so many people. Great life advice. And he has this formula that he talks about a lot on following your passion and looking at your belief systems and aligning with your true self. The information is extremely beneficial. So that's one of the reasons I've followed him for over a decade. Every opportunity that I've had to ask him a question, I've taken advantage of that.
I think there's a synchronicity there for you to run into Bashar so you can have an explanation of your experience.
Yeah, I've submitted several questions online and I've gotten picked for an interaction with him, as well as he's answered some that I have submitted for transmissions. Another funny thing about this that happened to me about 6 weeks ago is Daryl, the channeler, was hosting a whole weekend, this Bashar weekend in Sedona, Arizona in the middle of September. I was supposed to go, me and my sister, and we had a friend that was going to meet us there. And we were leaving out of Friday morning, and the Thursday night is when I started to have like chest pains, couldn't breathe and all this. And I ended up going to the ER. Almost didn't go to the ER because I'm like, I'm on a plane tomorrow. I'm going to go see Bashar. Like, I'm not missing this trip I've been planning for a year and I've spent all this money on. And I can't wait to be in, just bask in that wonderful energy with all of my Bashar friends. I had went the year before and it was just a wonderful experience. And then I was in the hospital for 3 days, obviously couldn't go. I can't wait to have another interaction with him to ask about the timing of that, because that was my full excitement to do this wonderful thing. And yet the universe said, no, it's time for you to have this other experience. I have learned so much from that. So I can see why I didn't go, but I definitely feel like I've had so many connections with Bashar and Daryl. A lot of it is probably just my higher mind throwing those symbols in there. So I'll pay attention, because anytime I have a dream with any of them, I pay closer attention and I tend to remember it as soon as I wake up. There's always some profound message in it that I probably would have just forgotten normally. When you see an important person to you in those experiences, you tend to want to hang on to that and bring it back with you.
Right. Now, We're talking about consciousness. Do you have any practices? Do you do meditation? Do you do any kind of journaling? What is your spiritual practice to raise your
Yeah.
vibration or expand your consciousness?
My biggest thing is going out in nature. I do a lot of meditating in nature. We have about 4 acres. We're sort of away from town. Our neighbors are spread out. There's horses and cows around. So I'm really thankful that we have some space. We have a lot of big, beautiful trees. And I'll just go outside and put my bare feet on the ground and be still and be present. And I won't necessarily have any intentions. Sometimes I'll do meditations with specific intentions, but a lot of times I just try to focus on nothing. And that's really difficult to do. I'm still trying to sort of figure that one out. But just being present and feeling like, what am I feeling today? Why am I feeling this way? Those thoughts might creep in, but just being present with nature and feeling her energy and things like that. I also connect with water a lot. So I might take a lot of baths or I'll go stand out in the rain. I love standing out in the rain. Now that I'm thinking about it, I do connect with the elements to get into the meditative state. It just makes me feel like this is right. This is home.
Yeah, the elements make sense. Yeah, with the earth and the water, dealing with the elements helps you return home to your essence.
It's very grounding because I tend to be way up here in my thinking and I go really spacey sometimes. If I don't ground and get that balance, people probably look at me like I'm manic or something. I'm like, let me just go outside and be in nature. I have a grounding mat that I sleep on. It's called an earthing mat. I definitely recommend something like that if you've never tried it. It's really great. I don't put it under me when there's a full moon or it's near the full moon. I've noticed that I can feel its energy a lot more, and then I just don't sleep at all those nights. I love my sleep, so I don't use my earthing mat when it's those times. But yeah, just that connection to earth, because I think a lot of people, especially if they're into UFOs and ETs and open contact is coming, people in that community want ETs to come and rescue us and fix everything, and everything's going to be just beautiful, rainbows and unicorns, and they're going to solve all our problems. Or they want to go in a ship and go to some other planet and leave Earth behind and leave this life behind. I like to remind people that that's not how it's going to happen. You're a human and this is your home and you chose to come here and incarnate on this earth and be with her. So I think a lot of people forget that they need to do that grounding and to come back to center and who they really are, because you can't go anywhere without having that foundation of who you are and being centered and balanced. That's what helps you flow with the universe and with the ETs. You have to have that good foundation of really knowing you're human and fully becoming human, even though you're aware of all of these other things there.
So have you noticed any of your knowledge impacting your family, or how's your interaction with that and the family to maybe instill some wisdom onto them or grounding practices?
I mean, I hope I've instilled some wisdom on them. Especially over the past few years since I've had so many ET experiences, and I'm so blessed that my husband listens to all of my stories. He's never judged me, not one time, but he's very, especially in the beginning, he needs physical evidence. He didn't believe in ghosts or spirits. And through my experiences with ETs, I don't know if it's like I'm developing gifts. I think people have a lot of gifts that they don't utilize, but being more intuitive, a little bit of mediumship. So I've been able to prove to him through some of the things that I've done that there are things beyond what I can see with my eyes and hear with my ears. So I feel like I've expanded his awareness of consciousness and this field of energy that's around us that you can't, always see and hear. And I'm always telling him, follow your passion and follow the formula and do what you love. And I can see he's starting to do those types of things. With my kids, it's kind of the same thing. Except for the youngest, he's not quite old enough yet, but for my older one, they know all the stories. They know all the things. I don't know what they think about it. They're like college age now, so they're kind of on their own, doing their own thing and not here very much. But I definitely hope that by them seeing me doing what I love and feeling like I'm serving others, they will be inspired too. My husband tells me all the time, you are so happy and bubbly and giggly and excited about life when you're doing XYZ. And he's like, and you're not when you're doing this over here, that current kind of rat race stuff. that I still do sometimes. So I definitely know that other people around me will see my energy change and feel my energy change. And the more I can offer that energy to others, hopefully they'll want to match it or pick it up in some way.
Right. I can relate to your husband because I was a skeptic as well. That memory at 5 years old was really suppressed. It didn't come back until I healed myself. To shift out of that, I had a paranormal experience my mind couldn't explain. I felt somebody sitting next to me that I physically couldn't see. That
That can freak you out for sure.
Well, it didn't freak me out. It just got me more curious. Like, what is this?
Yep.
What did I experience? So I started to read a book from a medium, like they talk to dead people about.
Hmm.
So through that book, I discovered meditation. One of the benefits of meditation was inner peace. And like, I need inner peace. And that's how I began. But it was pretty much, I needed that experience to shift me out of being a skeptic that there's nothing out there. And that's probably what your husband probably needs too, and he probably sees that through you, and it's probably opened up the door for him so he can see a new way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny. I remember, so his grandmother, one of his grandmothers, I never met. She passed before him and I got together. I couldn't even tell you to this. I'm not even sure what her first name is. I know that's terrible, but I've seen one picture of her because she passed a long time ago, but he was very close to her as a child. And I remember when I was starting to develop some of these things after telling him about these ET experiences, he's listening, he's shaking his head, but I can tell he's being that skeptical guy or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I want to prove it to you. I'm going to prove it to you that there's ghosts or spirits or whatever he was thinking at the time. I said, okay, you fall asleep. And as you're falling asleep, I want you to call in your grandmother and tell her 3 things. I don't care what they are, any 3 things. And then as I'm falling asleep, I'm going to call her in and ask her what those 3 things are. And then when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to tell you and you're going to be amazed. And so the next morning, we're getting up or whatever. And I had already texted to myself in the middle of the night so I wouldn't forget it. And he's like folding clothes on the bed or whatever, going about our day. And I was like, well, don't you want to know what she said? And he was like, okay. So first I described her, what she was doing and what we were doing. Then I told him the 3 things. And they were the 3 things that he had said to her or thought to her, if you will. And he just keeps on folding clothes like nothing just happened. I thought proving something major to him, like changed his whole life perspective. And he was going to be in awe. And it was just like, he was very nonchalant about it. And I'm like, how did you explain that I knew this? Like, how? And he just, I don't know, maybe he was in shock and didn't want to think about it. But I just remember that being a very funny thing that I still tease him about because he's still this little skeptical person. And I'm like, I can't wait until ships start showing up over the oceans or wherever when open contact starts so I can look at him and be like, see, told you so. That will be the most satisfying day of my life.
So we were starting to run out of time here a little bit today, but is there any kind of nuggets of wisdom that you want to impart on anyone before we leave today?
Nuggets of wisdom. Yeah, I just think I would always encourage people to follow this like 3 R's in my life. It's reflect, realize, and revolutionize, because that is a huge missing piece, I think, especially in the Western culture today, because we're very much engrossed in this society programming where you have to get up and go to work and you come home and you make dinner and you go to the ball game and you go to church and you go to sleep and rinse and repeat until you die. That people don't have the time. We are programmed to not think we have the time to stop and reflect on what's going on. Once you can reflect, then you can have realizations. And once you have realizations about your life, then you can use that to revolutionize. Even 10 minutes a day will completely change everything. It doesn't have to be a meditation. It's just stopping and reflecting on life. That's all you really have to do. I would encourage any of your listeners to do that.
That's great. And since I know you're an experiencer, and I'm sure there's other experiencers out there with the ETs and don't know anybody who they can talk to, how would they reach out to you if they want to talk about their stories, insights
Yeah.
into what's going on?
You can email me at hartmanfamilymedia@gmail.com. Or you can find me on Facebook, Allison Hartman. You'll probably have a better chance of messaging me through my Arkansas UFO Investigations Facebook page. I love to talk to people about their experiences. I will keep your information confidential. If they have nobody else to talk to, they can talk to me and I will not judge them.
because a lot of people are telling them, "Oh, you're crazy. You never experienced." I think that is changing a little bit. I think there's getting information out there, and other people saying, "Oh, there is something out there."
Right. Absolutely. I just think it's a gift that we need to give other people just to listen. That's it. That's what a lot of people need is just somebody to listen.
All right, Allison, thank you for joining me on the conversations today. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.